Did you know that in a typical 10-minute conversation, you're likely to be lied to 2 or 3 times? Now, consider this. For people over 60, a single, well-told lie from a scam artist, a predatory contractor, or even a desperate family member can be financially and emotionally devastating. What if you could see the lie forming before it was even fully spoken? Forget polygraphs and complex technology. The most powerful lie detector you own is your own observation, and today, I'm going to show you how to calibrate it. For decades, I sat across from men and women who had built their lives on deceit, and time and again, their own bodies betrayed them. The FBI calls it a tell. I call it the truth trying to claw its way out. It's one simple, subconscious gesture that law enforcement agents are trained to spot. A liar will almost always touch their face. This isn't a parlor trick, it's a window into the stressed mind. And I'm going to teach you how to open it. This phenomenon was famously documented by Joe Navarro, one of the Bureau's sharpest profilers. He logged thousands of hours watching suspects squirm and saw a pattern so consistent. It was practically a law of nature. When the pressure mounted, when the direct question hit a nerve, the hand would begin its journey north, toward the face. A sudden nose scratch, a pensive chin stroke, a hand that flies up to cover the mouth as if to physically stop the lie from escaping. Scientific studies have since backed this up, finding that subjects under the stress of deception touch their face up to 5 times more frequently than when they're telling the truth. The most fascinating part, they have no idea they're doing it. Their conscious mind is too busy spinning the tale. Let me tell you about a con artist named Silas. He specialized in bilking widows out of their savings with phony investment schemes. Smooth talker, tailored suit, looked you right in the eye. He was good, but he had a tell. Whenever I'd ask him to verify a specific transaction date, his right index finger would invariably find its way to the side of his nose for a long, slow scratch. His words were calm. Of course, Arthur, let me check my records. But his body was screaming, danger. You're getting too close. It wasn't the gesture itself that gave him away, it was the timing. It was his body's subconscious reaction to a very specific stimulus, a direct threat to his fabricated reality. Have you ever noticed yourself do this? Think about the last time you were in a tense negotiation or a difficult family discussion. Did your hand drift to your chin? Were you trying to soothe a hidden anxiety? Understanding this in yourself is the first step to seeing it in others. The science behind this is brutally simple. Your brain is a terrible multitasker when it comes to high-stakes deception. It's trying to invent a plausible story, monitor the listener's reaction for signs of disbelief, suppress the actual truth, and manage the guilt and fear of being caught. This immense mental effort is called cognitive load. This load triggers your sympathetic nervous system, the same ancient, hardwired system that jacks up your heart rate and dumps adrenaline into your bloodstream. When you see a threat, it's your fight or flight response. Your body is flooded with nervous energy, and it has to go somewhere. The brain, in a desperate attempt to calm itself down, defaults to what psychologists call self-adapter behaviors. It directs you to touch yourself. And why the face? Because the face, particularly round the mouth, nose, and eyes, is packed with nerve endings connected to the trigeminal nerve. This nerve is a superhighway straight to the brain's emotional and sensory processing centers. Touching it sends a faint calming signal back to the brain, momentarily lowering the anxiety. It's a subconscious pacifier for a mind at war with itself. The mouth cover is the most primal, a literal attempt to cover up the lie. The nose rub is often a displacement of that same impulse. The chin stroke feigns thoughtful consideration, but it's really just another way to self-soothe under pressure. So, you understand the why. The brain under pressure from a lie seeks comfort and subconsciously touches the face. That's the theory. Now, let's move to the practical application. This is the part that separates the armchair detective from the seasoned investigator. The single most important rule, and if you remember nothing else, remember this, is you must first establish a baseline. Before you can spot a deviation, you must know what normal looks like. Every person has their own unique dictionary of gestures and tics. Some people are naturally fidgety, their hands always in motion. Others are stoic, hands resting calmly in their lap. Your first job in any critical conversation is not to interrogate, but to observe. For the first few minutes, talk about something completely neutral. The weather, a television show, the traffic. Watch them. Where do their hands go when they are relaxed and telling the truth about something mundane? Does your business partner rest his chin on his hand when he's genuinely thinking? Does your grandchild fiddle with their collar when they're excited? This is their baseline. This is their honest state of being. You are mapping their normal. Without this map, you are lost. Let me tell you about the Henderson brothers. They came to my office after their father passed, locked in a bitter dispute over the will. The older brother, David, was loud and accusatory. The younger, Mark, was quiet, seemingly earnest and hurt by the accusations. He claimed a valuable antique watch, a family heirloom, had simply been misplaced. For 20 minutes, I let them talk, observing Mark's baseline. He was calm, hands loosely clasped on the table, making direct eye contact when speaking. He was a picture of placid sincerity. Then, I changed the subject slightly. I didn't ask where the watch was. I asked, Mark, what's your fondest memory of your father wearing that watch? His words were perfect, a touching little story about a fishing trip. But his body betrayed him. His right hand, which had been still for 20 minutes, broke formation. It drifted up, his fingers gently stroking his chin as he spoke, his eyes breaking contact to look at the ceiling. That was the tell. It wasn't a huge gesture, but it was a profound break from his baseline. The cognitive load of inventing a pleasant memory associated with an object he had stolen was too much. His brain needed to self-soothe. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was wrong in a conversation, but you couldn't put your finger on it? Your subconscious mind likely picked up on a break in baseline, just like that. Here's how you put this into practice in your own life. You're having a talk with a contractor about a project that's behind schedule. You start with small talk. You notice he consistently gestures with his right hand while his left rests on his thigh. That's his baseline. Then you ask the direct question, will you be finished by the 15th like we agreed? He responds, absolutely, everything is on track. But as he says it, his left hand comes up to briefly scratch his neck or rub his cheek. That's the red flag. The verbal and nonverbal signals are in conflict. His mouth is saying yes, but his body is saying I'm uncomfortable with this statement. And this is a crucial warning, do not jump to conclusions. This is where amateurs get it wrong every time. They see one nose scratch and they shout liar. That's a fool's game. The man might have a genuine itch. He might be stressed about something completely unrelated to your project. A single gesture is not a verdict, it is merely a signal to dig deeper. It is a signpost that says, more information is needed here. Your job is not to be a human polygraph, but an astute observer of anomalies. You use this information not to accuse, but to ask a better, more focused follow-up question. You've learned to establish a baseline. You've been warned not to treat a single gesture as a verdict. Now, I'm going to give you the key that unlocks the whole system. The technique that elevates this from a neat party trick to a powerful tool for understanding. A professional never, ever relies on a single tell. A single tell is a whisper. A professional waits for the chorus. We look for clusters of deceptive behavior. When the hand goes to the face, we don't react. We watch. We listen. We look for its accomplices. Because a body under the strain of a lie will rarely send out just one distress signal. It will send out a flurry of them, all at once. The face touching is your primary indicator, the flare going up in the night sky. The cluster is the ground confirmation that tells you where to look closer. This is what separates the work of an investigator from the guesswork of an amateur. The amateur looks for a single clue. The professional looks for a pattern of evidence. The most common and reliable partners to the face touch are changes in the voice and shifts in eye contact. The human voice is an incredibly sensitive instrument. It is intimately tied to our emotional state. When someone is lying, the tension in their body often constricts their vocal cords. You might hear their vocal pitch rise slightly, cracking just a little. Their pace might change suddenly, speaking much faster to get the lie over with, or slowing down as their brain struggles to invent details. Let me give you an example from the field. I was interviewing a corporate executive, a man named Franklin, about a suspicious stock trade. His baseline was pure confidence, booming baritone voice, unwavering eye contact, expansive gestures. He was the king of his castle. But when I asked him who he spoke to on the morning of the trade, the cluster appeared. First, his hand went to his chin in that fox thoughtful pose. Then, his voice, normally a powerful instrument, went up half an octave as he said, "No one out of the ordinary." Finally, his laser-like eye contact broke, and he suddenly became fascinated by a spot on the ceiling just over my shoulder. Any one of those signs on its own? Meaningless. A man can have a tickle in his throat. He can be distracted. But all three, appearing in the exact same second I asked the critical question, that's no longer a coincidence. That's a behavioral confession. Think about applying this in a lower stakes, personal situation. You ask your adult son if he remembered to get his car's oil changed like he promised. He says, "Yep, all taken care of." But as he says it, he rubs his nose. He avoids looking at you and instead starts checking his phone, and he gives a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head no even as his words say yes. This is a classic cluster. The verbal channel is saying one thing, while the body language channels are screaming another. Does this mean you should accuse him of being a terrible liar? Of course not. It means the subject of the car is causing him stress, likely because he forgot and feels guilty. It's an invitation to shift from accusation to assistance. Great. I'm glad that's done. Did the mechanic mention anything else we should look out for? This gives him a chance to come clean, without confrontation. The psychological principle at play here is called channel control. A person telling a lie is trying to consciously manage multiple channels of communication at once. Their words, their tone, their facial expression, their gestures. It is almost impossible for the brain, already under a heavy cognitive load, to control all of these channels perfectly. While they focus on making the words sound convincing, their control over their vocal pitch slips. While they focus on maintaining a normal voice, an unconscious hand gesture leaks out. The truth has a way of leaking through the cracks in the performance. Have you ever felt that yourself? When you're trying to hide your disappointment or frustration, do you find yourself clenching your jaw or tightening your voice, even as you say "I'm fine"? That's a micro-cluster of tells. You're seeing the leakage in real time. Use this knowledge to see the full picture, not just one pixel of it. You've learned to spot the initial flare, the face touch, and how to confirm it, with a cluster of other tells. Now we move into more advanced territory. This is how you move from passive observation to active verification. Let's say you've established a baseline, and you see a cluster of tells: the face touch, the vocal shift, the averted gaze, all in response to a specific question. Your suspicion is high, but it's not confirmed. What do? You use a classic interrogator's technique. You ask the same question in several different ways, and watch to see if the deceptive signals intensify. A liar's story is a house of cards. A single question is a gentle breeze. Repeated, targeted questioning is a gale force wind. The more pressure you apply to that fragile structure, the more frantically the liar has to work to hold it together, and the more their body will betray their struggle. Let me tell you about a young woman named Margaret, who was brought in for suspicion of shoplifting. From the moment she sat in my office, she was a wreck, wringing her hands, shifting in her chair, touching her hair, her face, her neck. Her baseline was a constant state of high anxiety. An amateur would have seen this nervous energy and immediately concluded she was guilty. But to a professional, her constant fidgeting was just noise. It was her normal. A face touch from her meant absolutely nothing on its own. So I focused on one key detail: her whereabouts at 2:15 p.m., the time of the theft. I asked her first, "Where were you yesterday afternoon?" She gave her alibi with her usual nervous energy. A few minutes later, I circled back. "Help me with the timeline again. What were you doing specifically round 2:15? This time, as she repeated her story, the cloud of random fidgeting coalesced into one specific, repeated gesture. She began to tug at her left earlobe. Later, I asked a third time, "Is there anyone who can confirm for me that you were at the library at exactly 2:15?" Her verbal story didn't change, but she was now pulling so hard on that earlobe I thought she might rip it off. It was the intensification and focus of one specific tell in direct response to a repeated stimulus that gave her away. Her general anxiety was a smokescreen. The earlobe pull was the confession. You can use this in your own life, but it requires subtlety. This is a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Imagine you're concerned a home health aide might be helping themselves to your pain medication. A direct accusation could ruin a vital relationship and be wrong. Instead, you probe. Question 1. I'm having trouble keeping track of things lately. Could you help me count my pills in this bottle to make sure the pharmacy gave me the right number? This is a non-accusatory, collaborative question. You watch their baseline reaction. Question 2. Perhaps a day later, my daughter was just saying how common it is for people to get shorted on their prescriptions. It's a real problem. You've now introduced the idea of missing pills without pointing a finger. Watch for a cluster of tells to emerge. Question 3. I'd feel much better if we just counted them together at the start of every week. Would you mind helping me with that? If their discomfort, the face touching, the vocal stammers has grown with each mention of the pills, you have a much stronger reason to be concerned. Have you ever been falsely accused of something? Think about how your body reacted. The stress of being under suspicion can itself produce anxiety signals. This is the crucial distinction you must learn to make. Are you seeing the general anxiety of an innocent person under pressure? Or are you seeing the specific, escalating anxiety of a deceptive person trying to protect a lie? That is the entire art of this practice. The escalating response to a repeated, specific stimulus is what points toward deception, not just discomfort. It's a targeted reaction, and that's what makes it so telling. So, you have the full toolkit. First, you observe the calm to establish a baseline. Second, you watch for the anomaly, the face touch, when the topic gets sensitive. Third, you look for a cluster of supporting tells in the voice and eyes to confirm it's not just a random itch. And fourth, if necessary, you probe with targeted, repeated questions to see if the signals intensify. That is the method. But now we come to the most important part of our discussion, the final warning. This knowledge is not a toy. It is not a weapon to be wielded in every argument or a lens through which to view your loved ones. With constant suspicion, wielded without wisdom, this tool will cause you far more grief than any lie you might uncover. It can turn you from an observer into a paranoid accuser, seeing deceit in every nervous tick and betrayal in every misplaced gesture. I knew a young detective once. He was sharp, hungry, and had just learned these techniques. He walked around like he was a god of truth, a human polygraph. He thought he could see into everyone's soul. One evening, he was talking with his wife about her day. She seemed distracted, and when he asked what was wrong, she touched her nose and said, "Oh, nothing. Just tired." He saw the tell. He pounced. He accused her of hiding something, of lying to him. It devolved into a terrible, trust-shattering fight. What was she actually hiding? The fact that she was under immense pressure to meet a deadline at work and was terrified. She was going to fail. She didn't want to tell him because he was already stressed, and she didn't want to be a burden. Her lie wasn't one of malice, it was an act of misguided protection. The stress he saw wasn't the stress of deception, it was the stress of her own private fear. He saw the signal but completely misinterpreted its meaning. He learned a brutal lesson that night. You can be right about the clue, and dead wrong about the conclusion. This knowledge, without compassion and context, is a loaded gun pointed at your own relationships. Let's apply this wisdom to a real-world scenario. You notice your spouse gets tense whenever the monthly credit card bill is discussed. You see the telltale signs we've talked about: the hand drifting to the chin, the vague answers. The amateur move, the move of that young detective, is confrontation. What are you hiding? What did you buy that you don't want me to know about? You've immediately created an adversarial situation. You might get a confession, but you'll have paid for it with a pound of trust. Now, consider the professional's move, the wise move. You see the same signals of discomfort, but you interpret them not as a sign of malice, but as a sign of fear or shame. So you open a door instead of building a wall. You say, "I've noticed that talking about finances seems to be really stressful lately. I'm not mad, I just want to make sure you're okay. Is there something worrying you that we can figure out together?" Do you see the profound difference? The first approach seeks a culprit. The second seeks to understand a struggle. When you see these tells, remember that most lies are not born of a desire to harm, but of a desire to hide. People lie to hide their mistakes, their shame, their fears, their insecurities. They lie because they're afraid of the consequences of the truth. If you use this knowledge to simply punish the lie, you do nothing to address the underlying fear. But if you can learn to see past the lie and recognize the fear that's driving it, you can solve the real problem. The real power of this skill isn't in becoming a lie detector. It's in becoming fearless. It's about shedding the constant, low-grade anxiety of being deceived and replacing it with a quiet confidence that you can see the world and the people in it for what they truly are. We've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from a simple observation, a hand drifting toward a face, to the complex mechanics of cognitive load and the subtle art of reading behavioral clusters. So what is the ultimate purpose of this knowledge? It's not to turn you into a human lie detector, constantly scanning for deceit. That's a miserable way to live. The real purpose is to learn how to see the invisible scripts that run beneath the surface of every human interaction. Think of it this way. Most people go through life listening only to the spoken dialogue of a play. But you can now see the stage directions. You can see the nervous glance, the tightened jaw, the hand that flies up to the mouth to hold back a truth. You don't just hear the words anymore. You understand the subtext. You see the entire performance. So let's put this all together one last time. Lying, especially about something that matters, creates internal stress. That stress triggers the body's ancient fight-or-flight response, which manifests in subconscious, self-soothing behaviors. The most common of these is touching the face. Your job is not to see that gesture and cry foul. Your job is to first know what calm and normal look like for that person, their baseline. Then, you watch for a sudden change from that baseline when a difficult topic is introduced. You look for clusters, the face touch combined with a shift in voice or eye contact to confirm it's a real signal. And you never, ever draw a final conclusion based on a single piece of behavioral evidence. Context, as always, is king. The next time you find yourself in a crucial conversation, whether it's with a doctor, a financial advisor, or a family member, I want you to try something. Don't hunt for lies. Instead, listen with more than just your ears. Watch for the harmony, or the discord, between the words being spoken and the body speaking them. If you see discord, if the words say "I'm confident," but the body language is screaming "I'm terrified," that is your cue. It is your cue to listen harder, to ask a gentler, more open-ended question, to show the person across from you that you are a safe harbor for the truth, whatever that truth may be. That is how you use this knowledge, not just to protect yourself, but to build deeper, more honest connections with the people around you. Use this secret from my world responsibly, not to accuse, but to understand. The true power lies in seeing the invisible pressures and fears that shape our world and our relationships. If you found this fascinating and want to learn more about the hidden psychology I learned over a lifetime of investigation, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments, have you ever caught someone being less than honest by their body language? Or perhaps, more revealingly, have you ever caught yourself